My name is Eric, and I'm the US Ecosystem Development Partner for Ontology Network. And today, I'd like to talk a bit about the future of the internet. So I went to MIT and I took a class on the evolution of the internet from Web 1.0 to Web 3.0. If we think about Web 1.0, that was when we took the ideas that we already had, like newspapers and banners and flyers, and just put them up on the internet. In Web 2.0, we started getting a little more interactive. We started doing social media, search engines, more interactions between us and the internet kind of made this new framework where we would talk to each other and not just interact with data. One key piece that's needed now as we think about Web 3.0, which is the semantic web, a machine-readable web that AI can interact with, that machines can interact with. Something that's always been missing from the internet is the understanding of what data is and how data relates to each other. So that idea is called ontology. That's a key component of Web 3.0. Broadly, ontology is the philosophical study of being, which takes a look at like metaphysics and what people are, what things are, what concepts are. In computer science, an ontology is more about the relations between data points and the relations between the properties, the names, and the contextual relationships between concepts, entities, ideas, and data. So if I were to search on Google for rock, like rock music, how does Google know, or how does any search engine know whether I'm referring to rock like the genre of music, rock like a person, like a singer or a band, or rock is in the name of the song? There's no way to know that just from the word itself, which is why it's important to have that each piece of data that we have on the internet to have an ontological understanding of what contextualizes this data and what relates it to the person that's doing the search, or what relates it to other data points that are with it. So blockchain, I think, is the answer to this. But one of the problems with blockchain is that it's very good for its own internal ecosystem, where dApps can interact in themselves and interact with each other dApps that are built on the same platform. You can launch a token, make that token interact with other tokens. That's all fine. Once it's on the blockchain, you're good. It's internal. The problem is that dApps aren't really good enough for most business use cases, especially the ones that deal with real-world assets and the one where you're trying to get now to interact with the rest of the world. We still need a way for identity and claims to authenticate our right over our data. We need secure ways to exchange our data. And most importantly, we need the tools to value data throughout the circulation, through the generation, the processing, the distribution. This is what I refer to when we're talking about ontology, that we need to be able to peg the data that we have to certain value and to give it value. Because right now on the internet, it can't do that. If I post up something, it's information. It's like a big poster board. Anyone can see that data, right? Like if I put up a stock photo, anyone could just take that stock photo and put it up somewhere else. If I produce a work or produce content, I have to rely on the legal system to protect me, and rely on copyright and patent law to protect me on the internet. And this happens because we don't have a way of securely owning our data, of being able to securely exchange it, give people access rights, and then take it back when they're done using it or when the term ends. So how are we able to do this and to make this new kind of internet? We take the concept of ontology and this ontological understanding of the relationships between data points and turn it into a blockchain project. So ontology is a multi-chain public project and a distributed trust collaboration platform. So I'm going to overwhelm you really quickly with all these technical terms to the point where you stop paying attention and start thinking about what they're serving for lunch. But just kidding, I'm not going to do that. We're going to go over these items one at a time because I want you to be able to learn something and be able to take away something from this that hopefully you didn't already know. The first piece of ontology is we have a chain network. So we're not just one blockchain, but we're multiple chains. And we do this so that businesses have an easier time trusting us. It's hard to get a business to want to just write all of their data onto the Bitcoin blockchain or just put it all public, especially when you're dealing with sensitive data like with healthcare providers and medical records. So what we offer is the ability for a business to spin up their own private sidechain, be able to set their own governance rules and framework for how that sidechain works, and then loop it into the main chain that we have to attestate the data and update the state every now and then. So even a business that has its own private chain running can still interact with the rest of the network, which is one of the cool pieces about blockchain, that independent companies can interact with each other, independent projects can interact with each other. We use a Neo virtual machine for our smart contracts, so we support smart contract functionality, which enables a lot of more interesting types of assets and tokens and programming knowledge, programming logic that you can use as opposed to just payments and cryptocurrencies. We support multiple languages, C#, Java, Python, and JavaScript, so much easier to help to onboard new developers in coding in a language that they already know instead of having them having to learn a new language. And we have tools like a new smart contract development IDE. We have APIs to help developers build. We use a dual token model. So we have the Ontology token, which has a finite supply and is used for staking. In order to have a node, you have to stake your Ontology. And the Ontology that you have generates the second token that we have, which is Ontology gas. So the Ontology gas token is what you actually use to pay for transactions and pay for running smart contracts onto our platform. The consensus mechanism that we use, verifiable Byzantine fault tolerance, VBFT. What this does is that it uses a verifiable random function to pick a consensus node every round. It actually picks 3, one to produce the block, one to verify the block, one to write the block to the chain. And picking them randomly each time around helps prevent collusion, helps keep it fast, helps keep it high performance, helps keep it fair, helps keep it random. Yeah, by picking the random nodes for consensus, you have a high efficiency. Now, distributed ID this is where I think that Ontology really stands itself apart. We have a decentralized identity solution and decentralized identity tools built into Ontology itself on the protocol level. So we have tools for identity verification and for authentication for people, assets, objects, and entities. We also have a data exchange framework to help with end-to-end data exchange, the change behavior based off of user authentication, and to help keep people's data private. A bit more on the Ontology ID. As a client, you're able to generate an ONT ID and link it to your address. And this ID you now have to, it can be for a person, it can be for an object. This ID is how you interact with the rest of the network. And the ID can have properties that the particular dApp or the particular business needs to know for that particular type of service that they're offering. With the distributed data exchange framework, now we're getting into, if someone has a piece of data that they want to share with someone else, they're able to give them access to it under whatever conditions and terms the smart contract decides it to be for. We even have new products that we're working on. So we've launched a sharding paper. We released a sharding paper last fall for talking about more vertical scalability. The white paper was released in 2018. We're about 55% complete on the progress of the sharding based on the milestones that we set. We expect to launch it by 2020, and this will increase the performance of the blockchain that we have. And you can read the full paper about it on ont.io/sharding. With performance testing, even without the sharding, even without the parallel execution, or even if we just look at the main chain, we're able to achieve 5,341 TPS in some of our most recent tests. So it comes out to about an average of 4,000 transactions per second. So now, these are all the tools and the frameworks that we offer. What can be built with this kind of platform? You can have multi-source identity for people or multi-source identity for objects. With people, you can have a profile, and this profile contains different attributes about yourself. It could be preferences, it could be skills, it can be events attended, it can be attributes, likes, preferences, things that you own, other assets that you own, characteristics, and actions. So rather than your data being spread up amongst these companies know your financial data, these companies kind of built this profile, your medical profile about you, the credit score company built your financial history, and all your data is just everywhere, like around the world. You don't know who's like building your profiles for you. Instead, you can have a very comprehensive and complex permissions set for your own data. You can own your data, you can license it out, you can give it out, and you can take it back, most importantly, if the terms are broken or if the terms are not, or when the term ends up. And the same can be done for objects as well. You can have objects that have relationships with other objects. You can have objects that have relationships with people. You can give objects identity as well as other people. So this becomes very useful when we're talking about the Internet of Things and talking about IoT. So if we want to link sensors or solar panels onto a network, we would give each solar panel an identity, and now this solar panel now exists on the network and is able to interact with anything else that's also on the network. If we think about it as distributed data exchange, now I can give access to my data based off of what the company is requesting. And one example is the distributed medical collaborative, where a healthcare provider would want to request data. A doctor would create data when the patient comes in to the visit. The patient is given the ownership of that data, and then the patient, when they talk to the pharmacy is able to then request to see the prescription, request to see the verification of the data, and the person can identify it and give it to them and let them know, just enough to complete that interaction. So your data is just not everywhere, and now every single new person that you interact with, or every single new person in the healthcare chain that you interact with now knows everything and all these unnecessary things about you. You can give the appropriate information to the appropriate parties and be able to take that information with you with each new service that you use. For decentralized finance, similar concept. You have a financial services provider. You can build a credit score profile around a person. You own it. You own it. If they're not comfortable with how little information you are revealing it, they won't give you the loan or whatever it is that you're applying for. But that's okay, because it's up to you. You have the power and the decision to decide whether or not you want to reveal all your information to a financial provider, or take the risk and try to get approved for a loan or get approved for a score without showing it to them. They don't just already know. You're in control of whether or not they can actually see it. This also works for distributed content generation as well. So thinking of content as property, which doesn't exist right now, unless you look into you rely on the legal system to help. You have data. If you write it, if you make a work of art online, anyone can copy and paste and just have it. And if the value in the artwork is just seeing it or just putting it up on a website, using it in the background of some other service or some other banner or some other website, you can't really do anything except complain to the government and say, like, hey, they just stole my work or they're using my work. With a blockchain network, you're able to peg the value to the viewing of the data and to be able to give that data access rights to the proper parties and the people that you want to see it. Even if someone takes it and then remixes it, because it's still linked back to the original piece of the data, you can make some interesting kinds of incentive frameworks where if someone remixes your content, you're still able to get a percentage of the revenue that's made or the value that's brought to the remixed version. So these are a lot of different concepts. What is actually being worked on right now? We have several partnerships and several dApps that are already building on Ontology. We've been around for, we've launched early in 2018, so we already had a couple of projects built on us. Paxos is launching a stablecoin on Ontology, so that's going to add, now every project that's also in the Ontology ecosystem will have the benefit of being able to use a stablecoin to make transactions and to use in their platform, as opposed to a token that can fluctuate in value. Sesame Seed, which is one of the largest Tron communities, is setting up a Ontology node as well, so they're going to be working with us. HyperDragons is a dApp, very similar to CryptoKitties, but they use dragons instead of CryptoKitties, so they're still like fun like dApps and games. I think the applications are much and beyond. Musica for decentralized music, decentralized advertising with DAD, Movie Block, which looks into the film industry, Fosun, which is doing loyalty, and we even work with Lanxess, which is a German chemical manufacturing company that's in the Fortune 500. So with them, we're working on supply chain for tracking chemicals. They deal with a lot of dangerous chemicals, and they need to know where the chemicals are and every step of the process. So we can give these chemicals and gives the objects in the supply chain an identity that is then traced and tracked through the production cycle. Why are these projects building on Ontology? For some examples, like HyperDragons, they've seen an increase in daily active users. HyperDragons first built their first app on Ethereum, and then they also built on Ontology. They launched a second version called HyperDragons Go. The version that's built on Ontology actually gets 4 times as many daily active users as the version of the game that's running on Ethereum. And we believe, one, because of the Ontology community that we have that loves to try out all these new products and be fully involved into the system. We also believe that faster transaction times provide a better user experience overall. I play a lot of dApps, and whenever I play a dApp, if I try to make a move in a game or an attack in a game, it's a little annoying to wait 7 minutes in between every turn just to wait for the block to confirm and for it to be like written back. So having those faster transaction times helps make gaming easier. It also just provides a better user experience for a lot of different kinds of services. There's more functionality that is able to be done with having the decentralized identity solutions built into the protocol level itself. Anyone can benefit from that. And we also have incentives, rewards, and funding for developers and support that we give from the Ontology Foundation. We have an angel investor plan where we can give out loans to new developers that are building on us. We have a worker ant plan where the top 5 projects every week share a prize pool of ONG tokens that are given to continue growing the team and continue growing the project. We have a developer plan where we also provide non-financial technical marketing and operation support above what we can provide in terms of financial support. And we have an early bird plan where we can return 50% of transaction fees in the form of a rebate to a dApp to help keep the money in the dApp ecosystem and help them grow, help them continue, correlated to how many daily active users they have and how many transactions are being done. So that will scale with the size of the dApp. And the full list of rules are on this website, dapp.io/support. And we're here to build a trust machine of which the world has never known before. I really do believe that the blockchain is the future, and just like when we first started the internet, or when the internet first started, the most innovative ideas that we could think of to what to do with the internet was, well, let's take newspapers, let's put them on the web. Let's put them on the digital screen. Let's take billboard ads and put them on banner ads, make them digital. Let's take directories and phone books and put the phone books online. And it wasn't until Web 2.0 when we started thinking of like, okay, we can interact with each other. We can make things that we didn't know existed before, like a search engine. We can make things like social media where people can talk and communicate with each other and share data. What's the next step is to now be able to take that data and attach and peg value to it. So if you kind of think like how artificial intelligence is like a mimicry of human intelligence, blockchain is really a mimicry of a human's ability to transact and trade value with each other. And that's not just money, that can be time, favors, any kind of debt between people, any asset, property, any asset. So now that we have blockchain, we're able to tokenize any asset and make it digitally native. And for the first time ever, we're able to just send value over across the internet. It's an internet of value. The only way this can exist is if we have the trust machine to trust the system and trust that the thing that I have is in fact unique, is scarce, has the properties that I want it to have, which is also difficult to do unless we have an ontological understanding of what makes this data valuable for this person, what makes this data be owned by that person if it's also over here. Or how is this the same words or the same content, say someone copy pastes a piece of artwork and now you have 2 JPEG files. What makes this JPEG file valuable versus this JPEG file, which is the copy? Like we couldn't do that before, now we can do that. So that's why I'm really excited to be working on this project, and I'm really excited if you guys if you're a developer and want to build an ontology, or if you're a business and you want to consider ontology for a business use case, you don't want you don't want someone else to just come and make Web 3.0. You want to be actively involved in the making of that process. Be happy to chat after this. You'll have the full support both from me and from the rest of the ontology team. So excited to see what we can build together. Thank you. We have about 9 minutes left, so we can take some questions and answers. Yes?
Could you explain a bit more how the staking system works, the incentive structure, or how nodes get rewarded, what the hierarchy is?
Yeah, so the staking, the consensus structure that we have 7, I think we just increased it to 8 consensus nodes that in order to stake, you have to put up a certain amount of ONT. I think the number is, it's like 1,000 or 100,000. It's in the thousands of ontology token that you have to stake. Anyone can become a node, and so you become a candidate node. And once you hit a certain size, and once you're able to get verified, you can become one of the consensus nodes. Now, when you're one of the consensus nodes, you're now entered into the verifiable to be VBFT, where every round 3 of those nodes are picked to participate in the block production for that root. And every round, the transaction fees that are done through put in through the network to put in the new block are then paid out to all of the consensus nodes. So yeah, and then on top of that, if you yourself just have Ontology, it also is just actively generating Ontology gas as well. So you don't necessarily need to put it into the node. If you stake it with a node, if you then participate in that, then you get actually more than just if you were to just keep Ontology token in your wallet. That would increase over time based off of the transaction fees, because now you're actively getting paid the transaction fees in gas as well, on top of the ONG generation that just happens from just having ONT token. Other questions? Yes?
What are some of the business applications that you would expect to be kind of most valuable, or some of the low-hanging fruit as far as the trust layer that Ontology is?
So I think that the easiest, or the ones that are most likely to happen the earliest, the more digital it already is, the easier it is to do. So thinking about things that are entirely digital, like content and copyright and patents and digital like imagery or code, that's pretty easy to then put into to build an exchange framework around that. It gets a little harder once you start dealing with things that exist outside of the internet. For example, like when you start talking about like medical records or real estate or property, right, for assets, then that takes a little more development and a little more compliance and a legal, like it becomes more than just like a tech problem, and now it becomes a logistical problem, an economic problem, a legal problem. That how do you start linking these assets to the blockchain that exist outside of the blockchain? So we're getting there, and the identity solution that we have is a good step in that direction. We're already working on use cases like that. We work with healthcare providers in China to have medical records on the chain. We work with Lanxess to do chemicals and supply chain. But it's definitely the ones that are, the more digital it is, the easier it is to do it earlier on. Any last questions? All right, well, thank you guys. Enjoy lunch.